Amen? Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat. Salamat sa mga nag-share ng good news. Nakaka-encourage yung mga bagay na ibinahagi ninyo ngayon sa gabi nito, yung mga bagay na nangyayari sa Mindoro at yung mga bagay na nangyayari na ginagawa ng ating Panginoon Diyos doon sa ICOC Albay. Gusto ko rin lang i-welcome yung mga taga-dito na kasama natin ngayon. So i-welcome po natin sila. So yung mga kapatid natin sa iba't ibang dako ng South Luzon, welcome po sa ating Devotional ngayon sa gabi ito. Nais ko magbahagi ng isang mensahe na magmumula sa Colossians chapter 3 at ang pamagat ng mensaheng ito ay set your mind and heart on things above. Itakda natin ang ating mga puso at isip sa mga bagay sa langit o sa taas. Ano mag-share ako ng aking screen? Set your heart and mind on things above. Alam niyo mga kapatid, I owe everything to God and this church. Kung sino ako ngayon, kung ano yung narating ko, ito ay dahil sa kung paano kumigil si God sa buhay ko at kung paano ginamit niya ang simbahan ito. Bago ako maging Kristiyano, ako isang nagalag. I was a man wandering in the world when God found me. God through the church taught me, mentored me, loved me for who I am, trained me for the work of seeking and saving the lost, raised me up to become the man, the husband, the friend, the disciple that I am today. Grateful ako sa napakaraming mga tao na ginamit ni God sa buhay ko. Sa nag-reach out sa akin, kay Bobby Deloy, sa aking grupo, kay Amart, kay Ronald Trico, kay Paulo de Vera, kay Mike Tan, kay Eric Carlos, nakasama ko nung ako ay lumalaki, at nung ako ay lumalago bilang sa Kristiyano, kay Rodel Gonzales, kahit hindi na siya bahagi ng ating kapatiran. Kay Arnold Dorente, nung ako ay nasa Mandaluyong, kay John Salud, nung kami nagsisimula na mag-asawa ni Tess, kay Ken Chao, kay Kevin Ikot, at itong huli, kay Coco Enrile. I will never be able to thank all these people equally to the things that I owe each of them. But to all of them, I'm grateful. I'm thankful for all the people na I've worked with through the years. Even kahit ngayon, working with our Kenneth PLC or Philippine Leadership Council. Sa mga Mone, sa mga Monte Alegre, sa mga Kabadsans, sa mga Estrados, kay Chay Maramara, grateful ako that they have influenced me a lot in so many ways who I am as a leader. Sa mga kasama ko sa South Luzon, sa mga church leaders sa South Luzon, sa mga kaibigan ko, sa mga Pasukins, sa mga Dursura, sa mga Adel, sa mga Ibais, sa Sapra, sa mga Budigons, sa mga Gulapa, at sa mga Elnar. Grateful ako dahil napakalaki na naitulong nila sa paglago ko sa aking pag-unawa sa kung paano pangunahan ang iba't ibang uri ng mga tao at kung paano makapagtayo ng relasyon sa iba't ibang uri ng tao. Grateful ako sa leadership ko sa Cavite na nakasama ko since 2006 hanggang sa ngayon. People that I have fellowship with, people I have become acquainted with, whether from Cavite or the entire South Luzon region. You guys have shaped and matured me to become a better leader, more importantly, a better disciple, friend, and brother in the Lord. I'm thankful for my wife, si Tess. Please do pray for her. Siya po ay may karamdaman ngayon, but I'm grateful for her. Who has just been with me for better or for worse. Stood by my side through thick and thin. Yes, I owe you my life and I owe you my love. You've always been there. And I'm grateful. Nakasama kita at ating anak sa Derek sa aking buhay. And arriving at this moment, being a disciple for almost 28 years. I'm turning 28 on December 4th. As an old Christian, I feel protective of the fellowship that I am a part of. I feel protective of this church. This beautiful bride of Jesus entrusted to us. As it is, from my gratitude and my love of this fellowship, that this lesson comes out tonight. Ngayong gabi ito, every complex challenge na kinakaharap natin, every problem we encounter, every trial we face presently can be answered simply by heeding the call of Jesus without exception and without excuse. Kaya nga this evening, we will be reading from Colossians chapter 3. Ang pamagat ng ating lesson, set your heart and mind on things above. Sa pagbasa natin ng sulat ni Pablo sa mga taga-Colosas, when reading this letter, I am amazed at the ability of Paul na i-diagnose yung mga underlying issues na kinakaharap ng mga Kristiyano sa lugar na ito. In Paul's relationship with God and his walk with Jesus, he seemed to understand the times and therefore what the church needed to hear in a given moment. Thus, isinulat niya ang sulat na ito para sa kanila. In our present climate or situation, I find this difficult to do, i-diagnose yung kinilalagyan ng bawat simbahan ng ating ministry. Yet, I do have some observations na nakikita ko within our family of fellowship. And this is not to discount that God has done amazing things in the church for the past 2.5 years. Na nakita natin na kung paano patuloy na lumago ang kanyang simbahan sa likod ng mga hamon na ating kinarap dahil sa pandemyang ito. At kaya nga sa darating na October 9, kahit na nagkaroon tayo ng hamon sa buhay, ay makikita natin na ang simbahan sa ICOC sa Tikaw Masbate ay sisimulan. Nakita natin na maraming mga ministries ang nasimulan. Sa Cavite, nasimulan na nga ang General Trias. Sa Laguna, nasimulan na nga ang gawain sa ICOC Nagkarlan. Nakita natin sa Lipa, sa Lemery, sa Batangas. Okay, even nga, dito nga sana, meron ngayon sa San Antonio, sa May Candelaria, sa Quezon, at even sa Bicol, mga ministries na natatayo o na-i-establish sa likod ng hamon na kinarap natin sa ating pandemya. Yet, despite all of these things, if we would carefully observe what is happening in the church, you may ask this question: what happened to the solidarity and shared passion of all, not just some, but all of us as a people of God when it comes to fulfilling God's Great Commission? Another observation na nakita ko, why all the fighting in social media, whether in politics or other things, as Christians to why all the distraction? Why easily give up our worship for the sake of work? Why the lack of devotion of some Christians? Why the apathy? Why do our young people easily give up their relationship with Jesus because of a relationship with a man or a woman in the world? Why the lack of zeal by some when it comes to reaching out and saving the lost? Sa palagay ko, part of the answer is that many have collectively ceased to set our hearts and minds on things above. We are too often arguing over affairs that are earthly o makamundo. Inaalay natin ang ating mga sarili sa mga partido that are not bent on making Jesus Lord. And the result has been we have been having divisions and factions. We have often made enemies of one another, even if hindi natin ito pinapakita ng harapan. We don't show it outwardly. And it is in this context, kagaya ng isinulat ni Pablo sa mga taga-Colosas, we should read what Paul has written here in chapter 3, verse 1 to 3. In verse 1, sabi ni Pablo, since then, you have been raised with Christ. They were dead because of their sins. So they have been raised with Christ. Bago na kayo. Meron na kayong bagong buhay. You now have life. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, o sa makamundo mga bagay. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. Dito, when Paul admonishes his readers to set their minds and hearts on Jesus, alam natin that he is responding to something that was already happening in the church. The people he was writing to were caught up with the do's and don'ts. Paul calls what they were caught up in as earthly. Tinatawag niyang earthly mga bagay na yun. Okay? Yung mga bagay na yung mga Kristiyano were caught up with. They were earthly things. He says that they already died to such things. Yet they were allowing their hearts and minds na bumalik doon. They were returning to it. There is, of course, as in all of Paul's letters, debate, as there is most that Paul was referencing throughout the letter issues na kinakaharap ng mga simbahan during this time. And similar to the book of Galatians, the Colossian disciples were probably facing social pressure na mag-conform to Jewish norms and law. Okay, they were being pressured to conform to these norms and laws so that neither Jews nor Christians lose their right sa kanilang religious determination under the Roman law. Dahil ang Judaism is allowed. Okay? They're allowed in the Roman law. Okay? Allowed sila. Okay? So, with local Jews growing jealous and envious of losing Gentile patrons to Christianity. Dahil again, take note, may mga Jews, may mga Judaism, may mga those who were involved in Judaism that are now becoming disciples of Jesus and are making Jesus their Lord. So, dahil nga doon, yung mga local Jews, because naiingit sila, natatalo sila. Dahil mas maraming nakakonvert na Jewish and Gentile Christians, natakot sila na mawalan sila ng patrons. So they began intimidating the Christians by threatening, or intimidating the disciples by threatening them that they would tell the Romans that they were a new religion at hindi sila part ng Judaism. At kapag nagkaganon, they will be punished under civil law. Mapaparusahan sila. Okay? The Jewish Christians, for fear of being punished by the Romans, began pressuring their Gentile brothers and sisters ngayon to get circumcised and to conform to food regulations and celebrations. Yun yung mga do's and don'ts. Okay? And additionally, ang isa pang problema, in Colossus, it seems that in Colossus, some of the Gentile Christians might have continued in some form of syncretic worship of their former mystic pagan deities or gods na sinasamba nila in the past, in addition to their newfound faith in Jesus. So, kaya nga, ang problema, they didn't agree, or surrender to the fact that there would be no combination of paganism and worship of Jesus. So, pinagsasama nila yung pagan worship with the worship of Jesus. In some ways, dualism. Na pwede pagsamahin yung pag-worship sa pagan God at pag-worship kay Jesus as Lord. And these are likely issues Paul was referencing to as earthly in this verse. Kasi namatay na sila sa mga bagay na to. They were not able to, again, if you're a Jew, okay, in Judaism, you were not able to fulfill totally the law. You always fall short. And Jesus died for you already to get you out of this. And Paul was referencing these things as earthly. And I know when I say this, that most people in this Zoom right now genuinely try to fulfill the directive of this verse na binasa natin. To set our hearts and minds on things above. We attempt to set our hearts and minds on things above and not on earthly things. What is challenging and difficult is that obviously, may mga pagkakataon na we fall short and we fail. There are times when you believe that you are setting your heart and your mind on things above, pero in fact, you're focused on worldly matters. And Paul would have written this if hindi ito yung case with the Christians. Why would Paul tell them to set their hearts and minds on things above if they were not setting their hearts and minds on things of this world? Bagay sinulat ni Pablo to, he wrote, I think, at sa pananaw ko, the church in Colossus believed that they were already setting their hearts and minds on things above. I believe when they read this letter aloud, most of them still believed that they were setting their hearts and minds on things above. And furthermore, I bet they strongly believe that Paul was referencing other people in the church and not them personally or taking it personally in their lives. Which is very similar with us today. Kapag nakakarinig tayo ng preaching o ng lesson, ang iniisip natin, minsan hindi yung sarili natin. Ang iniisip natin, ay yung brother na yun, ay yung sister na yun kasi nawawala sa devotional, ay yung brother na yun kasi nagbabab sila mag-asawa. We think of others when we hear of a sermon, when we hear a lesson, and sometimes we fail to understand that what is being said is for us. And we have to directly absorb it personally. So ito ang question ko dito. Do we miss the point? Why do we think we are setting our minds on Jesus when sometimes may mga pagkakataon na hindi? Ito, very basic. Very basic to. Are we setting our minds and our hearts on things above? Very basic to, Why are we not prioritizing the 4 basic things in Acts chapter 2, verse 42? Ano itong mga bagay na to? Apostles' teaching, breaking of bread, fellowship, and prayer. If we are setting our hearts and minds on things above, we would prioritize the apostles' teaching, which is what is in the Bible. We would not miss out on breaking bread, taking communion with the fellowship. We would always be praying, morning, noon, and night. If our hearts and minds are set on things above, we will be prioritizing this. And the question is this, are we doing this on a regular basis? Are we involved in the Great Commission and living out the Great Commandment? If we are setting our hearts and minds on things above, we would be living out the Great Commission. We would be going out and making disciples, and we would be living out the Great Commandment, loving God and loving each other as we love ourselves. And kapag nagkaganon, ano mangyayari? What we have in church is family. We share life together. We would be a family who forgives one another, who loves one another, who cares for one another. But the question is this, are we involved? Are we living out the Great Commandment? Are we involved in each other's lives? Again, we all know in the New Testament, there are so many one another passages. But are we involved in each other's lives? When it comes to sharing life together, are we living out the one another passages in the Bible? And that's why yun yung question na gusto kong ibigay sa atin ngayon sa gabing ito. Are we setting our hearts and our minds on things above? When you're not setting up your minds and hearts on things above, maraming mangyayari. And you can move down to verse 5 to verse 9, you would see a list of sins that Paul will mention here. Kagaya nga nung sinabi ni Pablo in Galatians chapter 5. You start living out verse 5 to 9, which Paul says, they have already put to death. Kasama ng kanilang Jewish way of living, yung kanilang sinful living, they have already put that to death. But the thing is, when they're not setting their minds and hearts on things above, they start going back to it. At ang nakakalungkot na iso, in verse 9, sinabi, do not lie to each other. And the thing is, they are lying to each other already because they are not admitting that they are living out things above. Hindi nila inaamin that they were setting their hearts and minds on things below. They still think and feel that they were setting their hearts and minds on things above, pero in reality, hindi. Kasi sinabi ni Paul, do not lie to each other. When we start focusing on the world, we can tend to lie to each other. We can tend to lie to our friends, our partners, our spouse. Okay lang naman ako pero in reality, hindi tayo okay. Dahil meron tayong tinatago sa buhay natin. You divert that attention to others. Yun nga, sila nga absent Yun nga, ganun ang ugali. We divert things because we try to hide something in our lives. And even today, if our minds and hearts are set on things above, narito ba tayo sa Devo? Yung isip at puso natin, narito ba ngayon sa devotional? O yung screen lamang natin ang naririyan at may ginagawa kang iba? Is our minds and hearts set on things above? Yun yung bagay na ina-address dito ni Pablo sa mga taga-Colosas. The reason I ask is because there are likely aspects to your life, aspects to your attention, aspects to your passion, and likely aspects to what you have made your goals in life that you only believe are heavenly bent, pero in reality, is not. At kapag ganon, we're deceiving ourselves. Yan, allow me to minister to you guys this evening. Kasi inisip ko, baka meron sa inyo, bigla nagtaas na ng inyong mga walls, at ginagalan ninyo ang inyong mga heart. There are correlations in life that I find very helpful. The correlations I found most helpful are the ones na nag-lead sa akin to people of wisdom and discernment na gumagabay at tumutulong sa akin para makarating ako sa kung sino ako ngayon bilang isang Kristiyano. At napakarami mga tao kanyang ginamit. And decades of experience has helped me to marshal some common attributes of wise people. At gusto kong i-share sa inyo ngayon yun sa gabing ito. Okay. Okay, no. Okay. Hold on, ha. Okay. Okay. Gusto ko i-share ngayon sa gabing ito. Okay. I'd like to share one of them because we've reached a point in this lesson, that it is relevant. At ano yun? Here it is. Nawala yung slide. So, suppose, for some reason, nawala yung slide. Okay. Pero ito yun. Wise people are not easily offended. Ulitin ko. Wise people are not easily offended when they are challenged. They try to learn from every situation, whether good or bad. And if you feel that this lesson is challenging you to look at yourself, look at what God is teaching you and not to others. Be wise. Maging wise ka. Tignan mo kung ano tinuturo ni God sa iyo ngayon sa gabing ito. Pamamagitan ng mensahe na binabahagi ko. In reality, we worship the concept of truth. Because God has caused us, tinatawag nga tayo ni God through Jesus Christ to worship in truth and spirit. And more accurately, we want to be on the side of the truth. And perhaps even more importantly, we are absolutely obsessed with not being on the wrong side of truth. Nagsisiguro tayo, gusto natin, doon tayo sa tama. Even though, in reality, we are on the wrong side of some point, nearly every day. Keeping ito, we just pretend not to be, okay, in conflict with our spouse, our children, our roommates, yung mga kasama natin sa church, yung magulang natin, because being on the wrong side of the truth has become equated to being right with God. So being on the side of truth equals being right with God. But the thing is, we think we are in the truth, we think we are in the side of God, when in some ways, there are things in our life na hindi aligned doon sa katotohanan. And sometimes we think it's just a small problem. Tingnan natin, maliit na problema lang. Okay? Parang ganito. Kaya nagmamadali tayo. Like pagtawid sa walang pedestrian lane. Nagmamadali tayo. So kahit walang pedestrian lane, tatawid tayo sa kalye. O dahil sa nagmamadali tayo, may emergency. Hindi tayo titigil sa red. Hindi tayo titigil sa red light or red signal. O sa pagmamaneho, ng sasakyan, nakalagay na, tumatakbo tayo ng 90 kilometers per hour, pero nakalagay na speed limit ay 60 kilometers per hour. Tingin natin, maliit na problema lamang yan. Okay? Dahil mayroong emergency o may kinakailangan gawin, yet it goes to a big problem. Kapag nabunggo ka, o kapag nakabunggo ka, malaking gastos, malaking abala. Pero sometimes, we look at it as a small problem, justifying things na ginagawa natin. Dahil nagmamadali tayo, dahil kinakailangan, so gagawin natin. And let me tell you this, if you're not setting your minds and hearts on things above, don't think of it as a small problem. You are a parent. At kung ikaw ay isang magulang, hindi mo tinatakda ang isip mo at ang puso mo sa mga bagay sa taas and things above, you will have problems in parenting your children because the world is going to pull your children. It's going to influence your children. And for parents, I tell you now, if you don't set your minds and hearts on things above, magkakaroon ka in parenting and raising up your children. If you're a leader and you're not setting your heart and mind on things above, magkakaroon ka ng problema in leading your group, whether that be a small group, a Bible talk, a house church, a zone, a sector, or a church. If your mind is not set on things above, if your heart is not set on things above, ano mangyayari? If you're in the full-time ministry, you're after the salary. If you're in leadership because of a role, you're after the praise and the prestige that goes along with leadership. And sadly, ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng paligsahan, pagalingan. Kahit na tama ang ginagawa, the motivation in the heart is to compete with others. When we don't set our minds and hearts, the things above. Bilang kaibigan, bilang kasama sa simbahan, when you don't set your minds and hearts on things above, imbis na maging grateful ka kapag binibless yung mga kapatid mo sa pananampalataya, ano nangyayari? Naiinggit ka. O nag-iisip ka ng hindi maganda sa kanila. Instead of thinking God, na God, salamat, binbless mo sa kapatid ito. God, salamat, ganito nangyari sa kanya. Nag-i-struggle ka. Because you set your mind on things on earth instead of things of heaven, na kung paano binibless ni God, ang bawat kapatiran. So, and sometimes you think it's a small problem. It starts out small, but it will become big. And here's the thing. Even kahit ako, I have to watch myself when it comes to this. I tell people to get help in their personal life. I teach about discipleship in classes, in sermons, and many of us do that. You tell your own children to live in the light. Nag-express ka ng frustration mo at church members at miss church or don't get discipling. You attend meetings. You teach about healthy discipling. But you, in a way, have compromised the truth. How? You yourself have only the barest traces of accountability in your own life in the form of discipleship. Or maybe you have a superficial version of it. Ang labas lang, yung discipleship. Hindi nadidiin kung ano yung laman ng puso at isip mo. Kaya hindi mo maisip sa things above na kahit na ginagawa mo yung tama at yun yung problema ng mga Jewish leaders during that time. Ginagawa nila yung tama, yung panlabas. Pero yung kanilang mga hearts at mind ay hindi nakaset on things above. And Jesus knew that. superficial versions of discipleship. Or you have a version of discipleship na kontrolado mo and you manage to protect yourself. Bakit? Kasi no one really asks you questions about your marriage or your parenting with freedom that comes with familiarity and consistency. No one has the authority to challenge your personal life. Maliban na lang na they risk some form of reaction from you kapag challenge ka, kapag sinabihan ka, magbibigay ka, lalo na pagdating sa anak mo. You somehow stand outside of true accountability. In your mind or heart, you believe that you have reached some level, age, or maturity that you don't need it. At ito yung challenge sa mga older Christians, and I say this to myself as well, na sometimes we think na porket tayo matagal na sa simbahan, we don't need accountability anymore. But in reality, we do. And if we're really going to be honest with our lives, kailangan natin. And here's an example. In our marriage, magsisimula tayo ng maganda. Lalo na pag bagong kasal kayo, you're fired up about marriage, you love each other. Yung mga mistakes, madaling palagpasin. You forgive. Pero sometimes it becomes unhealthy. Okay, you let it pass, pero it becomes unhealthy. Later on, nagkakaroon ng bickering, nawawalan ng affection, nababawasan ng intimacy, at kapag nabawasan ng intimacy, nag-grow ng contempt, and you're not opening it up. You're not allowing your marriage to be accountable, to be held accountable. And you find anything to distract you from the happiness in it by doing other things, and sometimes even ministry. Because your marriages are not doing well. You try to find happiness in doing ministry. You find fulfillment in doing ministry. Baptizing people, hanging the Bible with people. And I'm not saying it's not good. Tama naman yun. Pero you use that, okay, because you want to distract yourself from the problems in your marriage. And your marriage drives you away from your spouse. It saddens you. It angers you. Pero di mo mailabas. It causes you to question God's full plan for marriage. But you hide your marriage because you no longer think it can be helped. Or maybe gusto mong protektahan yung image o tingin sa inyo ng mga tao. And perhaps you believe others will think you have seen too much, kaya may problema ang marriage ninyo. So anong gagawin mo? So you hide deeper. And all the more na you put up a facade of what a good marriage is. You do the right things. But in reality, there are internal problems. You hide deeper. You tell others they need discipling. And you actually sometimes help other marriages, other people, with their marriages, with their lives. And itong kicker, successful ka kapag ginagawa mo yun. Nakakatulong ka nga. Tutulungan mo sila. And you look at as wise and knowing and giving and serving. You're successful. But this only validates the deception you perpetuate that God is okay with the hidden, the unhappy, and unhealthy aspect ng buhay natin. Yet that means that you're only bringing knowledge and talent into your decision-making and your opinions to the table kapag nag-uusap-usap kayo, but you're also bringing to bear your hidden darkness and deceit and shame into each conversation, each comment, each opinion you express. Alam niyo, kaya nga sinabi ko kanina, yung importansya ng wisdom pagdating sa mga bagay na to, especially when you're talking or dealing with people. Sometimes nag-usap-usap kayo, ang ganda ng usapan, biglang meron ka nilang marinig na hint na isang bagay na hindi maganda sa conversation na yun, regarding one person or another, and you would ask yourself, saan galing yun? Have you ever had that kind of experience talking with people? Na bigla na lang may bigla na lang lalabas na ang tawag natin doon sa panating yung hugot. May biglang hugot sa isang brother o sa isang sister o sa asawa o sa kaibigan o sa kagrupo o sa leader. And ang question ko ito, binibringat mo ba sa kanila yan? Bakit hugot lang? O tinatago mo lang sa sarili mo, tapos konting hugot lang, pero hindi mo ina-address o hindi mo dinidil yung issue in your heart and mind. Kasi yung mga bagay na yan, that will stop you from setting your mind and heart on things above. Kaya naman mangyayari, unresolved issues, when you have conversations, laging merong singaw. Laging merong comment na hindi maganda. And that stops you from thinking of things above. And kaya nga somehow, you convince yourself that these things don't affect your judgment. Okay? But in reality, they affect your judgment. They affect your thinking. And even yung rational mo, apektado na. And that is a problem. Because now you start setting your minds on earthly things, on worldly things. Apektado na lahat pag gano'n. Pag ang thinking mo ay makamundo na, apektado na ang marriage mo, apektado na ang pag-cash mo ng iyong mga biyaya, apektado na ang pagpapalaki mo sa anak mo, compromise na ang purity, okay na yung patingin-tingin. At least hindi naman, wala naman akong ginagawang hindi maganda, tumitingin lang. Pero Jesus raised up the standard when it comes to purity. Sinabi niya nga, di ba? Kasi mo nagdamang, tumingin ka nga lang hindi maganda, nagkukumit ka na ng adultery. Pero in our minds, we justify, tumingin lang naman ako, wala naman nangyari. Kasi yung asawa ko hindi giving sa akin. It affects our mind. It affects our purity. It affects our fears. Sometimes iniisip natin kung ano sometimes iniisip natin kung ano iniisip ng ibang tao sa atin, pero in reality, wala naman silang iniisip, tayo lang ang nag-iisip. But there is fear in our hearts because our minds are set on things on earth. Kasi if your mind is set on things above, you'll have a pure mind, you'll have a pure heart. You have no negativity. You're faithful. So yung mga fears, yung mga insecurities, yung mga doubts, na-overcome yan eh. Pero when you're focused on this world, you have a lot of insecurities. Pero when you're focused, your mind and hearts on above, on God, ba't ka may insecure? You are created in God's image. Why would you be insecure? If you compare yourself with the world, your mind is set in the world, talaga may insecure ka. Pero when you have your mind set on things above, ba't ka may insecure? Ginawa ko ni ganito for a reason. I have a purpose. I am special in God's eyes. I am in His hands. I've been chosen. I've been called from darkness and put into His wonderful light. Why would I be insecure? Yes, hindi ako ang pinakamayaman, pero blessed pa din ako. But a lot of times, many of us insecure because we compare ourselves with the world. Sila mayroong ganun. Even sometimes we compare ourselves with other churches. Buti ba sila may ganun? Tayo wala. It's compromise already. And these are all things. No, we as disciples, itong mga bagay na to, ito yung bagay na mga dapat kinocontest natin. These things are supposed to be brought to the life. Living with clear conscience out in the open. And to lie about it is to deceive yourself. To live in secrecy or hiding compromises your thinking, your motivation, and your decision making. It compromises the ability of your heart and mind to be set on what is above. And ito ang pinaka-nakakalungkot dito as I reach the peak of this lesson. There is a reasoning na ginagawa madalas ng iba. Ano yun? And I quote this. Sabihin ng iba, I won't let anyone tell me what to do. It's between me and God. Here's the thing. If it's just between you and God, why would He allow you to be part of the church? Why would He give a fellowship for you to live with, for you to live life with, for you to share life with? If it's just going to be you and God. How are you going to experience a glimpse of God if you're not in His family? Ito ang tanong, how do you look at church? Do you look at church as family? Or do you look at church as an organization? Yung reasoning ngayon, I won't let anyone tell me what to do. As a justification for secrecy and or an unwillingness to let others challenge your thinking. And show me a disciple that lies or spins a story about their personal life or ministry, and I'll show you a compromised point of view that should not be fully trusted. You cannot stand in front of a ministry pretending some level of sincerity because you have a Bible verse, a story from 15 years ago, and a tear in your eye about the need for humility in people's lives while you are not truthful about your life, only having a facade of discipleship. It isn't the way of those whose hearts and minds are set on things above. And the question really is this: why are we lying to ourselves and to the people around us about what's really happening in our lives? Aminin man natin o hindi, malaki ang naging epekto ng pandemyang ito sa ating buhay. We have been exposed and influenced by what we watch and hear in social media. We have exposed our hearts and minds to so much outside influence. Hindi lang worldly influence, even religious influence. To the point that we are asking this question, who is a disciple? Well, in reality, we know who a disciple is. When it's not clear in our minds and hearts as far as what a disciple is, it will affect our decision making. It will affect our judgment. When it comes to sharing our faith, ba't ka mag-share ng faith? Ayan, disciple din o hindi? It affects your sharing of faith. It affects your evangelism. It affects your decision making, having a relationship with men or women in the world. Eh, mabait naman siya eh. Eh, Christian din naman siya. Ibang grupo nga lang. When our minds and hearts have been exposed to such things, alam niyo, it's so easy to say na, oh, Christian din naman siya. But in reality, and I think for me this is clear, kasi coming from my own religious background, yung simple question lamang na, okay, disciple ka ba? Ang sagot ko, hindi. Kristiyano ka? Oo. May Bible pa nga ako, nag-worship ako eh. Nag-serve pa nga ako sa church, nag-usong pa nga ako dati. Maniwala man kayo hindi, nag-usong ako nun. When the Bible was opened up to me, Acts chapter 11, and the disciples were first called Christians at Antioch, in my mind, how can I be a disciple? How can I be a Christian? When in reality, I know I'm not a disciple. And it's clear to us who's a disciple and who's not a disciple. But we try to justify, we try to change the narrative. Why? Because we've set our minds on things on earth and not on things above. It compromises our decision making. It compromises your priorities in life. Alam mo naman na kapag ikaw ay disciple, you're going to worship. And then, why are you going to place work on a time of worship? I mean, I'm not saying that you just literally give up your jobs right now para maka-worship kayo. But God gives us the opportunity to work on our schedules as our faith allows it. Kasi kapag disciple ka, alam mo priorities mo in life. if we're not setting our minds and hearts on things above, it affects a lot of things in our lives. Kaya Paul is telling them, and he is telling to us today, Christians, set your minds and hearts on things above. Kapag itinakda mong isip mo sa mga bagay na ganito, magkakaroon ng malaking pagbabago sa buhay mo. Kaya nga kayo pagpapatuloy mo, okay, in chapter 3, verse 15 to 17, sinabi ni Pablo sa pagkatapos ng chapter na yan, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace and be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach, admonish one another with all wisdom, through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all for the name of our Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him. Ang ginagawa dito ni Paul does, okay, in this letter, he offers a comparison between the Roman household and the household of a Christian. He does a comparison between the household of a Roman and the household of a Christian, who is now a new creation, Christ. And kaya nga, one way of life, by necessity, yung Roman household, life by necessity, incorporates violent speech, justifies sex, makes rage and war, anger, virtues to be embodied, and essentially views relationships as something to be used in order to elevate self and its interest. Pero yung other way of life, yung Christian way of life, yung pinapakita dito ni Paul, values a system of choices that sacrifices self-interest for the sake of others. Kaya dito makikita ninyo yung gagawin. If you think of others, not your own interest, okay? And you place trust and authority in Jesus so that His body can be unified and so the body will live one another in trust. Kaya nga dito sinabi nga later on in verse 16, and you will have gratitude in your hearts when you let the message of Christ dwell among you richly. Kaya nga you don't think about yourself. You admonish one another with all wisdom. You sing psalms. You help one another. You teach one another. You allow the message of Christ to dwell richly in your lives. At kapag nagkaganon, alam niyo, mababago talaga yung Christian way of living mo. And here's the thing. This is what we need to strive for. We have to strive for this in our fellowship. We need to let the peace of Christ rule in our hearts, in our fellowship. Tayo magkakasundo, tayo magkakaisa. We are one family. Tayo ay member ng iisang katawan who were called to peace. And we should experience peace in our fellowship. We should experience the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in our fellowship. When we fellowship, when we're at church, when we're at Zoom like this, we should experience the joy of being with the fellowship because Christ richly dwells in us as Christians. And I pray as we start, that we start being honest and start helping each other to set our minds and hearts on things above. Kaya nga na-appreciate ko yung mga na-involved sa pag-isimula ng ministry doon sa ICOC na Carla. Nag-encourage talaga ako nung napunta kami doon nakaraan linggo. Gusto ko lamang pasalamatan ng ILIFAP, yung Laguna Core Group sa pamumuno ng mga e-bikes, kasama ng mga debatas, at ang leader pa doon. Yung kasama ko yung tumatay yung point person doon sa Nakarlan ng mga Rasanes, mag-asawang Rasanes. Salamat dahil tinatakdan niyo ang inyong isip at puso para gawin ang gawain ng ating Panginoon Diyos diyan sa munisipalidad na yan ng Nakarlan. Nakakatawa na kung paano lumalago ang gawain niya at dumadami kayo. Nakaka-encourage sa makita yung pagsamba natin yung nakarang linggo. Isang couple nga na na-encourage ako na gusto ko rin ilipat sa inyong lahat dito ay yung magkasawang si Homer at Marie Chris na Nusga. Si Marie Chris nag-celebrate ng kanyang birthday na nakarang araw. Happy birthday sa'yo. Alam niyo si Homer and Marie Chris nakakatawa. Okay? They reached out and helped 14 people become disciples doon sa Nakarla. And I believe it's because they have set their minds and hearts on things above. That's why you reach out. That's why you help people have a relationship with Jesus. Kaya napapatuloy niyong gawain dyan ang ginagawa ninyo. I appreciate those who are involved in starting the church in Ticao, in the island of Masbate, in Masbate. Ticao Island in the province of Masbate. Kaya nga, it's October 9, they will officially be recognized as a church planting ng ICOC Philippines. We will be having our day of prayer and fasting for them on September 30. That's a Friday. Pero na-appreciate ko itong grupo na to. And again, understanding ko saan nagmula ang struggle ng mga taga-Legazpi Albay. Pero alam niyo how they strove to grow in their faith and to repent. But they have to work on. Napilito yung mga kasama Budigon. Kaya kanina leadership dun sa Albay na nagtulong-tulong para tulungan yung mga disipulo doon sa Ticao Masbate para mag-build up in faith ni Fernand at mag-restore doon. At pagkatapos ma-reach na napakarami mga tao. Ito kasama na nga sa Kuya Ranier at kanyang asawa sa Quezon na mag-delete ng church noon. Na nakatakda ang mga isip sa pag-reach out sa mga tao, sa pagtulong sa mga tao na maging Kristiyano, maging disipulo. Mga simpleng tao na tinakda ang kanilang isip at puso sa mga bagay doon sa taas. Pagpatuloy niyo yan. And maaaring hindi ko kayo mabanggit dito na ginagawa niyo mga bagay na to. Gusto ko kayo ilipapalit sa ating Panginoon Diyos. Alam natin Panginoon Diyos ang inyong ginagawa. When you set your minds and hearts on things above, God sees it and God will bless it. Tandaan niyo to. And don't hold back. In doing so, don't compromise what we've been doing.